In section 2, we're going to talk about relative frequency tables, and we're going to talk about how you can find probability from those tables. So a relative frequency table, what you're going to do is you're going to find the total for each row and column first, if it's not already given to you. After you have your totals, you are going to double check that the total of the rows equals the total from the columns, because they should match. So for example, I have information here on kids from 7th, 8th, and 9th grade on whether they can swim or not. So I'm going to find the total from each grade and then the total who can and can't swim, and then I'll have my total overall. So 120 plus 60 gives me 180. 168 plus 11 is 179. 172 plus 3 is 175. And then for my columns, 120 plus 168 plus 172 is 460. And then 60 plus 11 plus 3 is 74. So now I only need to add the total from either the rows or the columns, not both. So if I do 460 plus 74, I'm going to get 534, and that is my total. If I do my total of my grades, 180 plus 179 plus 175, I also get 534. Okay. So if I want to find a probability from this table, I first determine my variable that I'm examining. So what am I trying to find the probability of? And I identify my value and the total of that population specifically, and that gives me my probability. So in our first example, we want to know the probability that you're in 8th grade. So the total that I'm looking at is my total number of people in the table. So my denominator is 534, and my numerator is the total that are in 8th grade, so 179. And you're going to want to check to see if this fraction simplifies or not. It's a larger fraction, so it's not quite obvious, and it doesn't actually simplify. So you can either leave it as the fraction, or you can write it as a decimal. Now, when it comes to decimal places, I do prefer you go 3 decimal places if it is not an exact decimal, just so that we're a little bit more accurate. Our second example, we want to know the probability that you cannot swim. So again, I'm looking at my total number of people, which is 534. Then my numerator is the total number who cannot swim, which is 74. Now this fraction does simplify because those are both even numbers. So at a minimum, I know that this is divisible by 2. So I'm going to get 37 over 267 as my exact fraction. And if I wanted to do it as a decimal, it would be about 0.139. So those are your very straightforward probabilities, finding the total from a specific row or column, or maybe a specific value, and putting it over the total number of people. You can also restrict your totals to a specific row or column. So for example, the word given restricts you to a specific row or column. So given is a term that you look for, and whatever variable comes afterwards is the row or column that you're restricted to. So given that you're in 7th grade, what is the probability you cannot swim? So that tells me I'm restricting it to my total number of kids in 7th grade, which is 180. So of those 180 students, I want to find the total that cannot swim, which is going to be 60. Now 60 over 180 does simplify exactly to 1/3, which you can leave it at as or 0.333. Okay. On the reverse side of things, suppose I'm looking at the total who cannot swim. So given you cannot swim, what is the probability that you were in 7th grade? So now my total is those who cannot swim, which is 74. So of those 74, how many of them are in 7th grade? And that is still 60. So my numerator stayed the same between the two problems. All right, so, but it's the denominator that changes. So this becomes 30 over 37. which as a decimal is about 0.811. So let me know if you have any questions about finding probabilities using a table.